No, I think we're all done, so we'll move on to Romeo is Bleeding Awful. I'm sorry, Romeo's Bleeding.
Because nothing says noir like a narrator. Gary Oldman stars in this 1993 affair from crazed director Peter Medak. And I'm going to stop there. As corrupt New York cop Jack Grimaldi, spending almost as much time taking backhanders from the mafia as he does rather cheating on his wife Natalie, Annabella Sciorra, whose surname I've never been certain about pronouncing, but I hope that's a close approximation.
First, you pronounce it in Italian, it's Shura.
Shura, right, okay.
She's an American Italian, so
exactly.
Might change, I don't know.
Yeah. For 60 grand a pop, Jack will happily shop the safe house location of an informant or witness and not think too much more of it, beyond burying his cash in his backyard on the way to his dream of boat drinks. His latest tip, however, resulted not just in the brutal death of the witness, but also his protective agents, about which Jack has at least an inkling of remorse. Making his discontent known to mafia boss Don Falcone, Roy Scheider, Jack is informed the hit was the work of ruthless assassin and gangland figure Mona Demarkov, Lena Olin, and is offered the opportunity to eliminate her himself after she is caught and similarly safe-housed. Seems a simple enough job. However, Demarkov is not your average gangster, proving to be every bit as manipulative and sadistic as she is seductive, which is quite substantially so. Demarkov begins to turn the tables on Jack, and his whole racket of playing the middle threatens to collapse around him as he finds himself making some very difficult and painful life decisions. I've always found there's a lot to like about Romeo is Bleeding, which clearly Drew's already set the tone for this. We're going to be at least marginally at odds. And despite it having been quite some time since my last watch, I was reassured to find there remains little to date it beyond some really bad 90s suits and a predictably overbaked Gary Oldman. It's the kind of movie that could have been made any time in the last 40 years, which I suppose can be as much a curse as a blessing. But Oldman, and particularly Olin, are clearly having so much fun with their roles that I find it pretty easy to forgive the movie its flaws. They are supported by a secondary cast which on paper looks absolutely nuts and contains more than a couple of names you wouldn't expect to find in largely blink and miss it roles. But listen, if you can get Juliette Lewis, Dennis Farina, Ron Perlman, James Cromwell and Will Patton to sign on for 2 days work apiece, then more power to you. Maybe they were all big fans of Spandau Ballet. Hungarian-born British director Peter Medak had honed his craft mostly in television throughout the 70s and 80s, up until he bought himself some profile with the 1990s The Craze. His work here suggests a firm, if slightly workmanlike grasp of both the medium and the genre, and he keeps things moving along at decent enough lick and with enough momentum to paper over most of the cracks. If I had to pick one flaw I find it difficult to excuse, then I'd have to go with Oldman's narration, which in common with 99% of movies featuring voiceover just isn't necessary. Mm-hmm. Nothing says, I don't trust my audience to be as smart as me quite like it. I'm pretty sure in Romeo's case it was more of a stylistic choice, hearkening to the Chandler-shaped shadow that has always loomed over the genre, but in this instance it's been pretty badly misjudged. The Jack Grimaldi narrating this movie is not the same Jack Grimaldi we see in it, adopting an oddly overblown vocal affectation so detached from Oldman's on-screen performance makes me wonder why it wasn't just attributed to a different party altogether. It's also disappointing that Sciorra and Juliette Lewis, who plays Jack's mistress, aren't given more to do. The former so fleetingly sketched as to make the stakes of Jack's marriage feel somewhat incidental, and the latter entirely superfluous to the plot besides shoring up the notion of what a total prick Jack is. Still, Olin's presence is strongly enough felt to alleviate some of my concern that the movie is doing the fairer sex a complete disservice, and her character, while not massively fleshed out beyond psychotic, manipulative bitch, has certainly always been interesting enough to hold my attention on repeat viewing. It will likely be another substantial period of time before Romeo once again comes into my orbit, but I've never not looked forward to watching it, and the same will no doubt be true of it then. Drew, this is where we fight.
I was going to see what Scott had to say first before I said my piece. No,
come on, let's have this out. Let's have this out.
This is terrible. This is such a bad film.
It's not.
Every minute. It is awful.
It's not terrible, and you are a bad man.
I know. I did not go with this film at all. I saw some
that badly.
I saw some review of this somewhere that suggested this was a satire, and I think that person might have been smoking something quite heavily that day. That was a nonsense, but no, it's like it starts off with a voiceover, which is awful and unnecessary, and clearly it's in there because, well, old war films have voiceovers, right? But yeah, you made your points quite clear, and I agree with all those. Like, it's not even, this doesn't have anything to do with the film, let alone that character. It's just not the same character at all. But then Gary Oldman is spectacularly awful in this film. He basically spends nearly the entire film looking like a scared wee boy. With almost every scene with this stupid glacial look in his face, like completely bewildered looking. He's so bad in this. When he's in this, I think he's probably pretty close to matching Book of Eli bad, and he's terrible in that. Different type of bad, but kind of same degree. And then just, like, none of the plot made any sense. Like, at all. Lena Olin's character has to get her arm cut off because she's going to be killed, but she ends up killing the person who would have killed her anyway, and like then she was working with the vet. None of it makes any sense. And really stupid things too that bother me. Not specifically in this film, it happens all the time, but there's that scene where they're driving down a pretty much abandoned street, apart from parked cars, where Lena Olin wakes up on the back seat, puts her legs around Gary Oldman's neck, and then he proceeds to crash. And like, why didn't you just brake?
According to Wikipedia, garter snake is a common...
You have to... Is that because you said legs around his neck?
I assume I must have done.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
That's staying in.
That is staying in.
Yeah, so as I was asking, I didn't want listening to Tube to tell me.
You need to get yourself a HomePod instead, mate.
Yeah, so they're driving down the street, like, why didn't you just brake? It's like driving down the street for ages, clearly has enough control to steer, so why not just brake? Like, well, no, because they wanted the crash to happen, and I hate that kind of crap, I really do. Then, like, she knew that he would A, be able to track her down, B, on the right night, C, would burst in and kill people immediately, and that whole Juliette Lewis death scene. Like, no, the whole film is really, really stupid.
Do you think you've taken this too seriously?
I hate this film, Craig. I haven't taken it seriously enough yet. No, it's yeah, and like
that's all right. You and I are only on strike 2 out of 2 recent podcasts. Don't worry about it.
What was the other one?
I can't remember. What was the one we recorded last? And I said it's all right. We can disagree and still be friends. I can't remember.
Congo,
what it was.
probably.
What was that?
Congo?
Could it be?
I don't know that I'm going to factor Congo in my decision making process there. I think regardless of your opinion on Congo, you get a pass. I don't count that as a strike.
Yeah, and he was supposed to be getting protection from the feds, but what exactly was he being able to testify to? And all it's like none of the plot makes sense, which really bothers me. And then said Gary Oldman's terrible, the voiceover's terrible. The only thing that interested me was like I've never seen Ron Perlman so hairy.
That is a takeaway. Listen, I will not deny you that is a takeaway.
Yeah, no, I hated it. I really did.
Scott, you want to be my friend still, right?
Like, seeing as no one's mentioned it so far, I don't think this is another film, this episode, with a soundtrack that ought to report directly to the bin. No thank you. Other than that, the only other note I've made on Romeo's Bleeding is that it made so little impact on me that I keep forgetting I've seen it. I had to keep looking up who's in this to remember what it is, but now Drew describes it, I'm actually more in his camp. I didn't enjoy this when I was watching it. I didn't particularly hate it, but I found it very difficult to concentrate on anything that's happening in it. It just bounced off me. So I won't be so stridently against it as you are, Drew. But I suspect if you'd sat me down and forced me to watch it properly, critically, I'd definitely be more in your camp than Craig's. Because there's a lot of stuff that's this just doesn't make a lot of sense plot-wise, and I don't think we're supposed to be taking this entirely seriously, but still, it needs at least a patina of respectability, which it just can't put together. Oldman's performance is not enough to kind of hold all this together. He's just not good enough in this film to kind of keep you in, or certainly keep me interested in his tribulations as he goes through these increasingly wacky set of events. And it just didn't work all that well for me. I'm not sure I hate it, but if you'd made me watch it again, I probably would hate it. So I'm not gonna. Yes, no, thank you.
It's not troubling my list of top 100 favourite films of all time or anything like that, but I do disagree with you strongly enough on how badly you feel this film is represented that I am happy for our friendships to diverge at this point and bid you farewell.
Fine.
It's been a pleasure. Well, it's a bit strong. I've definitely known you.
Oh, it's all coming out in the wash now.
I'll leave with my taste intact.
It's all coming out in the wash now, never mind the tumble dry.
Drying tumbler, as we established earlier.
Little in-joke for you there, listeners. Little in-joke for you.
Was it Possessor?
Little inside baseball. It might have been. It might have been. Although now you've mentioned that, I mean, Scott raised the spectre of Congo, and I'm worried that my biggest takeaway from this episode is going to be that I just want to watch Congo again.
I thought it was going to be that you'd potentially ended a nearly 30-year friendship over Congo, but no, apparently it's the other thing.
No, it's the other thing. It's the other thing. Don't worry
That
about
easy
that.
come, easy go, but we've got to put Congo in its proper context. Yeah.
Don't worry about that. Come on. Oh dear.